I just wanted to change the title of my presentation a little bit just for clarity and brevity issues. So this is Get, Place, and Identity in Le Guin's Earthsea saga. Basically, what I'll try to do is try to show you how the different places that Get, this central character of Le Guin's work, inhabits during his life affect the evolution of his character, of his identity as an individual. Now, the idea of belonging to a place is something prominent in Le Guin. She was born and bred in the West. She was a Western writer, and she wrote from the perspective of a Western woman. And this is something that she states very clearly, and she was very proud of it. Another key issue in her writing, both in her fiction and non-fiction, is the presence of the figure of the other, these individuals who have been pushed to the margins by the ruling hierarchy, and as a consequence, they've been rendered voiceless and powerless. Examples of this figure in the Earthsea saga can be found in the characters of Tenar, Tehanu, and Get. The thing is that, except for Tenar, the rest have not been studied too in depth. So what I wanted to do today is just focus on one of them and try to understand and analyze a little bit their otherness, their identity issues. Regarding the scope, the general term or the general theory that we use is the theory proposed by Yi-Fu Tuan regarding place and space, regarding the meaning that several geographical areas can develop. And this will be completed by talking about the pastoral and the so-called middle landscapes, together with some ideas on hybridity and otherness as proposed by Homi Bhabha. So what about Get's otherness? The sources for his lack of identity, let's say, are twofold. First, there's the geographical reasons, which is where Tuan's theory comes handy. Get is born in Gont, which is this island, this pastoral place in Earthsea, and very quickly Gont will develop into a place because, as you can see, it is the place where his memories and affections reside. It is the place where his childhood is spent. So there's a lot of memories, loads of memories related to that. But most importantly, as I quoted from Tuan, it is a center of value. It is where meanings reside for him, and it is where he constantly goes back to try to find that meaning. In opposition to this, Rogue, which is the place where the School of Wizardry is found in Earthsea, represents this idea of space, at least at the beginning, because it offers Get this idea of mobility, of being able to go out to meet the world outside. It also offers him this opportunity of perhaps meeting other people, visiting other places, or even this idea of abstractness, which means that now in this new space he will be able to become what he wishes to become, not something that maybe he was predestined to be. Regarding the roles that he fulfills, that he acquires, develops, there is a clash between two roles or identities, which is the initial role or identity of the shepherd, and this other role of archmage, which is somehow imposed on him once he becomes a powerful wizard in Rogue. Somehow these two identities will clash, and this will mean that the identity of the shepherd will be silenced for a while. This implies that Get will stand in between both realities and being incapable of relating to any of them. He cannot go back to being a shepherd because he's the archmage now, but he will never fully somehow relate or settle into this role of archmage. Another key idea in Tuan's theory is the idea of nostalgia, this idea of the places, or the fact that we are only capable of seeing the value and the meaning of places once we are away from them. And the truth is that episodes of nostalgia, of thinking back to his past, are constant in Get. He's always thinking of how much better off he was in Gont, just taking care of a bunch of goats. Yeah. However, his otherness is not comparable to that of other characters in Le Guin's Earthsea. He's much more powerful because, of course, he fulfills this extremely powerful hierarchical role of the archmage, but also he shows a degree of agency that other characters do not. This extremely high degree of agency allows him to decide upon his future. We can see this in the novel The Farthest Shore, the third novel of the original trilogy, when after using up his power to try to mend the wrongs made by this evil wizard cop, he sees his power has been spent, and he decides that he doesn't want to go back to rogue, he doesn't want to continue being a wizard, and instead he moves to Gaunt, to his birthplace. Now, we might think that this going back home implies that he will immediately be able to relate to his identity of old, but this is not true. He still finds himself in between two realities, in between the reality of the shepherd and this reality of the wizard, which has been somehow left behind. Those around him see him as a shadow man, no good to anyone, a dead man forced to be alive. It is at this point that his hybrid identity, which means this original mixedness that all of us have within us, comes to the surface. He's first put in contact with his hybrid identity, let's say, at this point. Now, this idea of lacking an identity is said to be also a gate to being able to develop an identity of one's own in one's own terms. So one can decide what they want to be. In Ged's case, nature will be central to this development. Now that he is back in Gaunt, he will develop a relationship with nature based on just being with it, of existing in nature and cooperating with nature, not just using the power that nature can offer to act in a universal scale as he did when he was an archmage. It is also interesting to see that Gaunt, as a pastoral place, this idyllic place, has a lot to offer to him in relation to his identity. These are ideas taken from the work of Gret Garrard and Marx, and they, for example, they oppose pastoral in relation to this idea. So pastoral can be or can stand in opposition to civilization, which in Earth is represented by this social epicenter of rogue. It also offers the individual the stability of nature against the turmoil of the continuous action of the outer world. They also stand away from power struggles. In pastoral places, there are no power struggles, as there could be, for example, in Rogue, in Earthsea. But most importantly, they offer the individual this opportunity to lead a life of just mere contemplation, mere being and existing. Now, so little by little, I'm going to jump a little bit through this. Ged will start revisiting these places of his childhood, especially an area in Gaunt called Realby, which is a mountain area. And he will be able to see how these places somehow have a meaning in store for him, a meaning that he can relate to, but at the same time, he's also capable of giving meaning to these places. So this taking and giving of meaning implies that these places of his childhood, in light of Tuan's theory, will start becoming place again, will start to be concrete places that he can relate to. Also, now that he is back in Gaunt, he will take up again this activity of goat herding. And the most important thing that this activity will offer him is the opportunity to be with himself, to be alone up in the mountain, because this will allow him somehow a time of introspection where he will be able to look inside and ask the questions that need to be asked and somehow obtain the information that he needs at this point. So this also implies that he will have to somehow cry for himself. There's this idea of grief, and it is through this idea of grief, through trying to cry his past somehow, that he will be able to acknowledge that within himself there's two identities. There's this identity of the shepherd, and there's this identity of the wizard. None of them is evil. They are both good. They're just there, and they make up who he is. And lastly, basically, one key element in this new relationship with nature that Ged will develop, and in this road to accepting his hybrid self, will be the idea of work. This is a quote at the end of the fourth book. By this time, Ged is living up in the mountain with his partner and a child. And this is the partner's quote. She says, "Shall we live here? I have money," she said, "enough to buy a herd of goats and Turby's winter pasture if it's for sale, if it's still for sale. God knows where to take them up the mountain summers." So we see how the prospect of being able to work, and most importantly, being able to work the land, are essential for them staying there first, and then second, for Ged to be finally able to reconcile with himself. And here I would like to include this idea of the middle landscapes. This is something proposed by Leo Marx. Middle landscapes are basically spaces that stand between wild nature and society, and they are places where their society lives in communion with nature. They work the land, but they never pose a threat to nature. At the same time, as nature is not a threat to them. So there's this kind of harmony, as you can see here, between art, which means work, and nature. It is also interesting to see how, as Carrard comments, the American pastoral tradition has this element of work as necessary to establishing an appropriate relationship with nature. And they both agree somehow that the idea of working the land, the idea of existing together in communion with the land, grants the individual this possibility to come out as someone new, as someone improved, this kind of renewal or rebirth, as you can see here. Yeah? For example, Marx says, "A landscape means regeneration to the farmer, representing the possibility of a secular, egalitarian, naturalistic resurrection." So, coming up as someone new. Basically what Ged does is, in this road to acceptance and to finding an identity for himself, is he, by going back to his origins, he's able to establish first a proper relationship with nature, which as a consequence will allow him to accept the different bits and pieces that make up his identity. This is a quote from Tonya Payne, and she says that nature in Le Guin's stories has an impact on the human beings who encounter it and brings them freedom, which is exactly the case of Ged. And I'd like to finish with one quote. So by the end of the Earthsea saga, we can see that Ged, through living a life of simplicity and work, is able to have a happy life. He's okay with his identity, he's okay with what he is, with what he has been, and he can live a life of satisfaction. This is a scene right at the end of the last book, when Tenar, who's Ged's partner, comes back. They are sitting out in the porch, and this is what we can read. Ged looked at Tenar and smiled, the broad, sweet smile that she thought, perhaps strongly, perhaps rightly, nobody but her had ever seen on his face. So we can see Ged is a happy person after all. Yeah? These are the words I've used, and thanks.